Now you've heard about PB&J's exceptional programs that have endured, thrived, grown, and changed over 50 years. To be around for 50 years means that our services have been fueled with commitment, dedication, and passion that comes from a rich history of client-centered care. Let me take you through a brief history of how we evolved. PB&J was born in 1972 when Christine Ruiz and I were hired as part of the Bernalillo Mental Health Center. We were the child development team and for the Southwest Valley, and we were to go and find gaps that existed in services. And heaven knows, in 1972, there were many, and to fill those gaps as best we could. Well, we were based in the mental health center, and every Wednesday morning, a group of women would come in for treatment. 10 or 15 women would sit around a table and do arts and crafts. And as they did their arts and crafts, and of course with their permission, a nurse would go around one by one and inject them with Thorazine. That was the treatment in those days for clinical depression. The women would finish their projects, go out at the end of the hour, and be given a vial of Thorazine to offset the side effects of the Prolixin, and off they went. Well, I would wonder, who are these women? Whose lives are they affecting? Who affects their lives? Who are they? And so I asked if I could start driving them home. They were very happy to get a ride, and so one by one, I would go into their homes and found, in fact, that all of them had children, young children. And those children lived as their mothers felt, very dark, very dank, very depressed. In most cases, windows were shrouded with blankets and towels to block the light. No toys, nothing around, and they sat depressed with their mothers. Well, Christine and I had both been teachers, and so we decided, let's just start a program for these children. And we were, as I said, in the mental health center, and we got permission to clear out a storage room. We got donated books and puzzles and toys and began a wonderful program. In the morning, I would go into the university and borrow a bus and drive around the valley picking up children and bringing them to school. And the kids did great. They were joyful. Didn't take very long. They were running and playing and dancing and enjoying music and doing art and doing all the things that preschool children do. Wonderful. And a funny story is that one day one of the children said, "Well, what's the name of this place anyway?" We were stunned. We hadn't a clue. So we said to the child who asked, "I don't know, what do you want to name it?" Child pondered, looked, said, "Peanut butter and jelly, because that's all you ever feed us." In fact, we did feed them lots of commodity peanut butter and jelly. Well, the school kept going, and it was just lovely. Except we started noticing children were coming in bruised. Obvious signs of being hit or smacked. We weren't happy. What went on? These were children that may have been depressed, but they were not abused prior to that. Through a great deal of pain, we pondered and realized that we had interrupted a family system. We, through our instruction, changed children. They were changed in their behavior. They were changed in their joy of life. But they were going home to moms who weren't ready for that. And so moms still sitting in the same level of depression had children coming in and demanding things. "Read to me, play with me, read me a book, let's take a walk." Well, that wasn't going to work. And we decided very quickly, we can't do this anymore. Parents have always got to be involved. Children need to be viewed in their environmental contexts. They're not unique in spite of their family. They are part of their family. And so we spent the next 10 years, having changed, having recognized that families always have to be viewed as a part of one another, and the program grew and evolved. And we eventually moved, of course, out of the storage room and got our own quarters. And in 1974, received our first grant and moved into more permanent quarters. And it was just all good. We spent those years deeply committed to the fact that families and children always must be viewed within their environmental contexts. And never, never again were children to be viewed separate from their parents. That was a founding principle of PB&J. Sadly, we forgot about absent parents who still influence their children's lives. In the early 80s, a father was released from prison. We'd been working with his wife and 2 young daughters who'd become strong and vibrant. They had graduated from PB&J and were now in Head Start. The children were in Head Start. The mom was working full-time in a lovely home, supporting her children. It's all good. But then Joe came home. And he found a family very different than the family he'd left 3.5 years earlier. He didn't like what he found. He came home and he said, Mary, let's party. First night out, Mary said, I got to be at work in the morning, Joe. I got to go to sleep. No, I want the wife I always had. Let's party. No, she resisted and resisted. Joe went at her. He was frustrated. He was angry. And he attempted to beat her as he always had. But she stood up to him. Unfortunately, he then went after the kids. And that's a common thing in domestic violence. Anyway, he went after the kids, and at that point, Mary really stood up to him and said, I'm going to call the police. Well, Joe took off, furious, angry, bitter. Out he went. Mary locked the door, went to sleep. But Joe came back, and he came back very drunk. And he came back with a gun in front of his children. He killed his wife. Devastating. Devastating. PB&J was able to identify the grandparents of those children in a tiny little town in South Texas. And we did bake sales to bring the grandparents up to Albuquerque. As a grandmother now, I can only imagine what these grandparents were going through, grieving for their daughter, yet welcoming their grandchildren, who they would now raise. In a broader context, we knew we had to do something much, much bigger, and thus began our prison programs and our work with children of incarcerated and arrested parents, programs that have been stellar, that have been written up all through the country and replicated for their excellence. And the rest is history. Part of the proud PB&J history spanning 50 years. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being part of us, for believing in us, and for helping us to begin another 50 years of, you guessed it, services rooted solidly in providing exceptional family-centered services. Thank you for helping us make that happen.